Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Today we have a little bit of a treat for you. We've talked to a bunch of Paralympians. This guy is a Paralympian, Nick Catanzarite, three-time Paralympian in alpine skiing, but he is also a judge. We have never had a judge. He's a judge in Grand County in Colorado. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. My first podcast.
Your first podcast. I'm hoping that it will be a comfortable and enjoyable experience. But I want to get to the judge thing eventually, but let's take a little bit of a step back, because you and I were on the ski team together. And how did coming back to skiing, because you were a ski racer before your accident, had a skiing accident like me, and then you came back to skiing. How did you take to that as a mono skier?
I did not like it. I did not enjoy sit skiing, and my mom kind of made me do it. She's like, we always ski together as a family. I've seen people do this. You're going to do this. And I was falling all over the place. I had a tether. I was very bad at it when I started. So it was not love at first sight for me when it comes to mono skiing.
So you were skiing. I mean, you grew up in Indiana, but you skied at Winter Park, and were actually at a program and for running a women's race, I believe, when you actually had your accident, right?
Yeah, all of that is true.
I mean, you'd seen people in mono skis, right? Because Winter Park is the mecca in a lot of ways for disabled skiing.
It's true. Yeah, I mostly had seen them carrying their mono skis in and out from the locker room there, and that didn't look like much fun. I don't know. I got to be honest. I didn't see anybody in a mono ski that really impressed me before I got hurt. Somebody that made me think, "Gosh, that doesn't look so bad." I don't remember seeing that, because I wasn't real inspired to do it. And my first few days, I was less inspired.
Was your mother often the driving force in things during your childhood?
I mean, she was the one who thought it was a good idea for me to go to Winter Park before I got hurt and ski race, because it was a dream of mine. So she often let me do things, or wanted me to do things, encouraged me to do things that maybe she ended up regretting, because I think in the end, the sit ski thing was also pretty scary for her.
As a mother, I would imagine it is an absolutely terrifying experience to see your son strapped into this thing, going down the hill, completely out of control. How long did it take for you to feel like you actually kind of knew what you were doing? 10 years, 20 years?
Yeah, right. I'm still working on it. No, I would say, probably at least, let's say 15 days, because we came out my freshman year of college. So I got hurt. I went back to Michigan. I was in school at Michigan State. So I got hurt my senior year of high school. And I was back at Michigan State, and we came out as a family to ski at Winter Park that winter. So it would have been the winter, Christmas time, 1995, 96 there. And I went for the first time, and I probably skied five or 6 days, which was hard. And I think I don't know when I would have come back, but sometime in that 5, 6, 10-day range, I started feeling the ski underneath me. And this was an interesting time in skiing too, because so I got hurt in 95, and they were just coming out with what they called them parabolic skis back then. And you could put one on a mono ski, and boy, I started feeling the ski underneath me in ways that I never did before. And I'd get one of those clean arcs here and there when I picked up a little speed, and sort of took off from there.
were you the one, so you were out for Christmas and then you came back, were you the one who said, yes, I want to do this? Or was this your mother saying, I think it'd be a good idea. Then we can all enjoy the mountain together on vacation.
The second time, you mean, or the first time?
Yeah, the second time,
The
when you came
second
back
time.
the second time.
Yeah, no, I mean, after the first time, I was like, all right, I can give this another shot. And after that, you remember, well, after that is when I really started to take it seriously. And well, sometime after that, but I graduated from college, is when I moved out permanently. But yeah, sometime in there, I just started linking those turns together and having a lot of fun, more fun than anything, that I had experienced since my injury. So it was definitely something I wanted to pursue.
For me, it's often where I forget that I'm sitting down when I'm skiing. That's the change, because it is that feeling of making a turn. When did you see somebody who was good? Because I actually went to Winter Park after probably like a week or so of skiing, or a week of falling really in a mono ski. And I saw Michael Norton ski and I was like, oh, okay, like you can do this. Did you ever see anybody who could ski and go, okay, you can do it? Or was it all your own experience?
Yeah, I'm going to backtrack, because what I distinctly remember is I was in the hospital. So I got hurt in Winter Park and I was at Craig Hospital. And while I was at Craig Hospital, I went to some event. I do not know what it was, don't remember, but they were honoring some people. And one of them was Sarah Will. And they played some video of Sarah Will skiing in a Super G and a downhill. And that was the first time I saw someone, and I was like, that looks amazing. That looks scary. That looks like she really knows what she's doing. Like, you can actually get in a sit ski and have fun and ski really, really well.
So you were at Michigan State, not necessarily able to ski all that much, I wouldn't imagine.
No.
When did you decide you wanted to pursue it after school, or how did that work, that you wanted to do the Paralympic thing?
Yeah, I didn't ski much in Michigan. I think I've only skied there once in a sit ski anyway. And we kept coming out in the winters. I came out with my family to Winter Park, and I would ski a little bit here and there. And then one of my old coaches, Al Bender, he was a coach for me when I was an able-bodied skier. He started coaching disabled athletes in Winter Park, and he really encouraged me to do it. And my parents had a condo in Winter Park, and I graduated with a philosophy degree and thought maybe this is something, I had the opportunity to do it. And so I wanted to come out and see what it was like and keep ski racing, because I didn't get to keep doing it before, but this was a whole nother world.
And was it that you were going to go to the Paralympics? Was that your goal in coming back, or was it just to kind of continue, or how did you approach it?
Yeah, I don't think I had the Paralympics as a goal. I just wanted to come out and ski and get better at it, because I still wasn't very good. Didn't have a lot of days. Still couldn't really get on the lift or by myself. And so there were a lot of things I still needed to learn, and I just wanted to do it. And then, a year into it or so, it started looking like the Paralympics was an opportunity I might be able to take advantage of and make that a goal. And so I did, yeah.
Having been a skier before, what did being good actually mean for you? Like putting that time in to actually be good?
I mean, it meant a lot more than just getting down the mountain. Because, yeah, I've said this to other folks. I mean, skiing, I was better at skiing than I was at anything as a 17-year-old kid. And it was a pretty high bar. I didn't want to just go out and, get down the mountain. I wanted to go fast. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to be able to ski bumps. And so, yeah, I wanted to go out. I wanted to compete. I wanted it to feel like something that I was really good at again. And it did eventually. It took a while, but yeah.
How did the conversation go when you told your parents after you graduated from college that you were going to pursue skiing with a philosophy degree?
They were always supportive. They really were. They supported me when I said I wanted to get a philosophy degree, or that's what I wanted to major in, and they supported me when I wanted to pursue skiing more. I think it probably started to wane at some point because I crashed in a downhill race and my parents were there and they were like, "This you can't keep doing this. You can't." But that was later, right? In the beginning, they were always very supportive.
Right. They'd already done the hospital thing. They didn't want to do the hospital thing again. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the balance of this was kind of interesting, though, because you moved out to Winter Park and you would lead philosophy discussions too, wouldn't you, at the library?
I did. So let's see, after my first winter, so I moved out in 99 and I stayed in Winter Park and I applied for a job at the library there in Fraser, which is the town right down the road from Winter Park. While I was in that job, I initiated this, it was called Socrates Cafe, which is based on a book that I had read by a guy named Christopher Phillips. And he was sort of, his spiel, his sort of movement was based on this idea of bringing philosophy back to the people and, using Socrates as a model. So he was setting these up around the country. I don't know if he still does it or not, or if he's still writing. I haven't paid too much attention, but yeah, I used that as a model. And I went to my boss at the library and she's like, "Yeah, give it a try." So yeah, I started that program at the library and it was really fun, actually. It was great fun.
So how did it work? Did you give people reading and then lead the discussion? Who was it open to? Who showed up?
Yeah, there was no reading. That seemed like maybe a little more investment than people were willing to give. It was simply show up, and sometimes I would inquire of people if they had some sort of question. That was the idea, right? Socrates went around asking a bunch of questions, or I would pose one, and oftentimes I would come prepared with something, like a big unanswerable philosophical question, like, what is freedom, or what is free will, or what does it mean for something to be sacred, and go off. I would say on average I got somewhere between 5 and 10 people, sometimes maybe a few more. Oftentimes they were retirees who had second homes and were decided they wanted to be in Grand County, but it was a variety of folks. There was some of my friends, a little younger at the time, would come and talk to. It was fun. It's funny, I hadn't thought about that for a long time.
Would you get some people who were there every week?
Yeah, well, I didn't do it every week. Yeah,
okay.
That was too much. I did it twice a month, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And how did you ensure that this philosophical discussion stayed amicable?
I don't know, but it always did. It was a little bit of a different time too. I don't think people were gunning for a fight, but people would disagree, but that was always that was fun, and that was sort of part of it. But it never really got off the rails, at least not too far.
Well, that's kind of Socratic, though, right? I mean, the whole idea of kind of like, you have a theory, and then can I poke some holes in your theory, that kind of thing. And what was your role?
Yeah, I was Socrates. I would just sit there and ask questions, because that's how Socrates sort of operated, right? And it's sort of an easier position to be in, and it is disarming, right, for people, which may have also played a role in keeping it amicable, because if you ask people these questions, they start to think about it and they think they have answers, and sometimes they don't, or they have to come up with something on the spot, or sometimes they actually rethink, what it is they've proposed. So I tried at least. I would certainly jump into the discussion. Of course, like everyone, I have ideas of my own, right? And I would float those as well. But the idea was that my role would be as Socrates, the person asking the questions.
Right, and you never really know exactly where he stands. They were taking an ethics class in business school, and that was kind of the role of the professor was, well, what about this? What about that? And you're like, is he on this side? Is he on that side? Which side is he on? And that's kind of your position. How did that balance work for you as a ski racer? You're working in the library, you're conducting these discussions, and you're pursuing, a Paralympic dream.
Well, I liked it. I really wanted, in retrospect, I'm not sure why, but I really did want to work. And after the ski season, that first ski season, I was like twiddling my thumbs. And I remember the position opened up. It was I don't want to overstate this, it was a part-time clerk position. So this is a job where you're, putting, plastic covers on books and shelving books or putting books on shelves that I can reach at least. But they let me do this program. It was 20 hours a week. So it wasn't that intense. Although during the ski season, I was skiing every day, and I would go, and the library was open one night a week. So I would work at night sometimes and on the weekends. And I don't know, I really enjoyed it because I love books. I love libraries. And I do love philosophy. And so it was I got to do sort of both the things that I like to do. Even if it was a little tense, but they really supported me as well. I was able to take time off to go to ski races and travel and stuff. And then I probably was in the job for a couple of years before skiing sort of took over. And then I was just available as like a substitute. I would go in if I was available, I'd go in when they needed someone. But no, it was a great balance. I loved that job.
Well, you were keeping your mind engaged too, which is, I don't know about you. For me growing up, it was like school was always the first thing, and then your sport. And granted, sport was the stuff that I gravitated toward. And then after graduating, then it was an opportunity to pursue the sport part of it. But you sort of worry that thing between your ears is going to atrophy as you're working on everything else. So for you, it seemed like it was an opportunity to keep your mind engaged too.
Yeah, yes, yeah, definitely. And in a way that I really enjoyed doing it and with other people. Yeah, for sure.
When did the skiing thing take off for you?
Well, probably, yeah. So after 2002, so I was not a member of the US national team going into the Paralympics in 2002, but I was after that season. So it was really sort of going into that 2002, 2003 winter when, I started going to camps. I was on the US team, and I would go to camps in Austria. Like we went to Hintertux, and I was going to World Cups, in Europe and things like that. And that's really when I started looking at 2006 as my real opportunity to sort of grow and give this ski racing my best shot.
And what did that feel like? Because it sounds like to a certain extent you're pursuing the skiing thing, but then you kind of had one foot in, let's call it sort of the academic pursuit kind of thing as well, and putting that time in, right? So you had 2002, then you had another 4 years till 2006, till Torino from Salt Lake. What was that time commitment like? Were you always looking toward the future as you were skiing, or were you really just looking at the skiing part?
Yeah, but that time period, I really was focused on skiing. I didn't really know much after after that, because I was still trying to, I was aiming to be, one of the top sit skiers in the world at that time. And so that was really my focus. I hadn't thought about what things would be like after ski racing.
Is that a luxury that you could give yourself, that you really just didn't have to worry about whatever was going on next?
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, my parents were really supportive. They were never, when I graduated from undergrad, they weren't like, you got to get a job, you got to get a place to live, you got to do X, Y, Z. It was a luxury.
Well, it's always funny, isn't it, to be able to look back on that time and say, wow, like I pretty much ate, slept, whatever, ski racing. I got up, I went to the mountain, I came back, maybe I went to the gym and trained, came back and did it all over again. And the simplicity of that life, sometimes as we get older, you look back and go, wow, that really made a whole lot of sense. So
well, it's funny too. This came up recently. We had some family visit us in Winter Park, and we took them skiing, and they're from California. It was my wife's family, and one day it was gorgeous, but the next day it was snowing and cold, and they didn't, they lasted like one run, and I was somewhat sympathetic, but then I thought back, for most of my life, when I was going skiing, I just went skiing. Like the weather was not a consideration, right? It was just, oh, we're going skiing. That's what we do. So it's funny for me to look back. It's interesting anyway, because even now, I don't, now it's weather dependent for me. I like to go on nice days.
That's always a funny one, because I feel like when you retire, you say exactly that it'll be all bluebird days when I go out. But I've found myself in a lot of days that are not bluebird days.
Yeah.
It seems like that thing that you say, but you can't really follow through on it. When did you think that you were going to go to law school? How did that plan come together?
Yeah, calling it a plan and saying it came together is a bit of an exaggeration maybe, but I competed in 2006 in Torino, and then I competed that following season, 2007. And sometime during 2007, I met, do you know Jerry Grosswald? He passed away a few years ago, but
I don't know if I do. I don't know if I did.
So Jerry was the CEO of Winter Park Ski Area when I got hurt. And he always sort of looked after me, because I got injured at Winter Park. He always was sort of there in the background, just checking on me, just as a mentor. And one day I met him in Safeway. I just ran into him in Safeway in Fraser, and we were just talking, and he'd asked me if I had ever thought of going to law school, and he would deny this. He did deny this when he was alive, but he can't deny it anymore. This is how I remember it. He's like, have you, I was like, well, I'm thinking about maybe going back to school when I'm done skiing, and maybe I'm getting close to being done skiing. And he goes, well, have you ever thought of law school? I'm like, no, never have. He's like, well, if you're interested, there's a scholarship available for a disabled athlete to go to the University of Denver. It's called the Willie Scheffler Scholarship. It's what Allison Jones went to school on. And he said, it's going to be available. He's like, I cannot guarantee you'll get the scholarship. I can't get you into law school, but if you're interested, it's something you might think about. So this sounded like an opportunity. Like I said, I'd never thought about law school, but once someone put it on my plate, I thought, well, sure, I could see if I could do this. And I signed up for the LSAT, the law school entrance exam, and I started getting my application ready for school. I mean, it literally happened probably the end of 2016. Or not 16, 2006, right? So coming into that winter is probably when I saw Jerry. and got everything together. And then I met with Willie Scheffler was a friend of Jerry's, and he was involved in a lot of things, but they established the scholarship, or Willie did. And then Willie's son had been sort of administering it. So I met with Jimmy, and I was accepted to law school, and so I got the scholarship, and that's how that happened.
You got in, you had the money to pay for it. So was it, because it sounded like it was more of an undergraduate scholarship as opposed to a graduate scholarship. Is that right? Because it was 4 years and then a year study abroad. How much of this did you do?
Yeah, well, and so I told that to Jerry. I said, I have my undergraduate degree. He's like, well, you ever think about law school? And so what I did, and the parameters of the scholarship are sort of loose, I would say. But in any event, so what I did was I decided I could make it 4 years by doing a couple of different things. I could get a dual degree in law and international relations. So I do have a master's in international relations as well. And I also took time off during that whole thing to go to the Paralympics in 2010. So I did all those things in that 4-year period. And I never did do the study abroad that was associated with it, but yeah.
Well, maybe that's still on the table if you decide you want to go study abroad.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, I don't know.
So you went to, what was law school like? Because you'd had some study, you'd had some stimulation with these discussions, but law school is notoriously brutal.
Yeah, I was not prepared for law school. I did, and it was at the end of the first semester when I realized this. So it took me some time, but about the end of the first semester, I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And then maybe by the end of the third semester, I was like, this is definitely not for me. I did not like law school at all. I hated it. But again, so my mother was in the background saying, you gotta go, you gotta finish, you gotta get this degree. And I knew, right? Practically speaking, I knew, right? Not everyone gets a free law degree handed to them. In fact, no one does, right? So I knew, practically speaking, that this was a really just unbelievable opportunity. So I followed through with it. But boy, there were some times there when I was like, look, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't like anything about this. Why am I doing this? I don't need to be here.
Was Jerry checking in on you as you were in school?
Yeah. I had to fib to Jerry. But yeah, I had to fib to him a little bit, and Jimmy. But anyway,
To tell him that you loved it when you really didn't.
I didn't tell him I loved it. I just said, I'm getting through. I didn't, which I was getting through, but it was not. Yeah, I had no idea what to expect. Like I was mentioning in the pre-show here, I don't have any. I was the first person in my family to go to law school. I didn't have like a context for this. That's all a little bit a side point. And I was never. I don't think I was ever really all that good academically at anything except philosophy. Like I was good at philosophy, which is a pretty narrow thing. So I don't know, maybe I had a little bit, maybe I was a little overconfident going in too, but I made it through.
Well, it has to be some of the critical reasoning from philosophy that translates into the law, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, no, there definitely is. It's very logic and reason based, and so it's a bit of a natural transition. Yeah.
So when did the finishing of law school and the international relations, when did that happen, and when did that happen with regard to what you're doing skiing wise?
Well, yeah, I had to think about this recently because for a different purpose, but So law school is typically 3 years. I started in 2007. The group I came in with graduated in 2010. It's funny that sometimes I don't know that I remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure this is how it went. I went my full first year, because first year of law school is sort of a very regimented thing. So I did my full first year, first summer. And then I started taking courses for the international relations that first summer after my first year of law school. And then I did another semester of law school. And then, so that would have been fall of 2008. 2009, I took off of law school. I didn't go to law school, and I trained. And I did the pre-event in Vancouver, and I traveled and did some World Cup races, and then picked things up again in the summer and the fall, and then took off the spring of 2010 again to compete. And then after 2010, did summer, fall, and then spring again, and graduated, I think, with both degrees in the spring of 2011, took the bar exam that summer. And that's basically that, I think.
So you'd moved from Winter Park down to Denver, I'm assuming, to go to school.
Yeah.
So you were in school. So you weren't really skiing at all as you were going to school, because you probably, you had a fair amount to read when you were in law school.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Yeah. No, I didn't ski at all. I don't think I skied at all. And I would have skied a few days, but not very much.
And then you remade the team the US team, in order to qualify for Vancouver in 2010.
Right. Yeah, that would have been right. Yeah.
Wow. So what was that like? I mean, you're a full-time student with, maybe you're not enjoying it that much, but the promise of a professional career that is separate from the career of being a professional skier, which doesn't necessarily pay that much generally. So what was it like to go from the promise of like a professional career to go back to skiing to try to qualify for Vancouver, when you really didn't have much going for you, because you didn't have any results for the previous couple of years?
Yeah. Well, it was fun, right? It wasn't the only thing I had going, so I wasn't hanging my hat on my skiing career anymore. It wasn't the most important thing necessarily for me. So that took some of the pressure off it. And I do remember having quite a bit of fun with it. And it was fun I felt like I still, even without training as much, I had built up sort of a reservoir of muscle memory from the previous 7 or 8 years, 9 years, whatever it was. And it was fun to just go out and ski and race and see it. I saw it maybe from a little bit of a different perspective. That was like I keep saying, it was just fun. It was more fun.
Was this almost like a little vacation from your grown-up life?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, definitely. That's what it was.
You get this and then you finish the ski year, and then it's like, okay, you are back into law school.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I had anything. Law school, I can't remember if I had anything that summer. I think it was probably more the international relations, and they actually had a professor at I can't remember now it's the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies, and it's actually named after Madeleine Albright's father. They had a philosophy sort of section in the international relations, and I enjoyed taking classes with this particular professor. So my first time back, or that summer, would have been a little bit more leisurely than law school, but law school would have been right there the next fall. But it was, it would have been equivalent to my final year of law school, which is it's less stringent than the first two. You get to choose some of your courses. It's not quite as intense or quite as painful. You've already sort of figured out how this thing goes. Here's what they say when you're in law school. They say the first year they scare you to death. The second year they work you to death. The third year they bore you to death. So I was in that third year. So, but yeah, it was pretty fun because, as you mentioned before, with the library and ski racing anyway, I mean, it's fun to do both things for me. So it was fun to go back.
Fun to go back, and then, but then it's coming to an end, right?
Yeah.
And so then it's either you go into ski racing full time, which I'm assuming you didn't want to do, or you actually take this degree, you pass the bar, and you become a lawyer. How was that settling in your philosopher's mind?
Well, the skiing really wasn't an option. That wasn't something I was really considering. I was really, yeah, it was very difficult because here I was where a lot of folks find themselves after their undergrad, like, okay, so what do I do now? And that was hard. It was difficult. I was, because I didn't necessarily want to be a lawyer. I liked things like mediation. Mediation was something that I thought would suit me pretty well. I did end up taking a course in mediation. I was a certified mediator. But yeah, it was scary because now I delayed it about as long as I could, this idea of becoming an adult that would support myself. And here it was, right?
And here it was, and what happened? How did you move through? How did you become an adult? I'm assuming you are now.
On paper at least. So I graduated, and I did not pass the bar my first time around. So I took it again. I missed it the first time literally by 2 points. And they do an automatic appeal if you're within 5, and they relook at your score and they see if maybe they missed something, but they didn't. So I did in fact fail. And then I took it again and I passed it the second time. And the whole time, I was sort of on the lookout for jobs in the legal profession. And what I did was, a mutual friend, Steve Peters, he's a lawyer, and I've known him. He's been a lawyer in Denver for a long time, and I've known him my whole skiing career. I met him for the first time when I moved to Winter Park because he was is a skier, and he had started his own firm, Peters Mayer Wilcox, and he's like, look, why don't you just come in and you can. I want an office in Winter Park. He was based in Denver. He's like, I want an office in Winter Park. I want to take cases up there. I want you to be the person up there. So he rented an office space, or maybe he had already rented it. He put me in it. And I would be in Denver sometimes, and it was basically just, I think I said this, but the 3 partners and then me. So Steve, 2 of his partners, and then the little guy, me, the new guy. And they would give me stuff to do, and I would take clients, people walk through the door, and Steve would sort of help me with this because I didn't know what I was doing. I never had clients before. But so it started that way. And then, I did that for a couple of years before this position came up. But
and what were you working on? Like, what kind of law were you practicing, or were you just sort of practicing law in general?
Well, specifically, so I had clients that I had criminal cases. So it was, a lot of different stuff. Domestic violence, drugs, DUIs. I did some civil stuff, like some trespassing stuff. I did at least one sort of a divorce case, family law case. So a lot of different stuff. And then if the partners had something that they were working on that they needed me to do some research on or something, I would do that kind of thing. So that's just all internal. It wasn't based for a client or anything. It was their client, but I would do some research, and they would get clients and bring me into depositions and stuff in Denver and different proceedings, and I would go to the courthouse with Steve and watch him, in some of the different things that he would do.
How did you start moving toward the judge part of it? Because you were 37 when you became a judge, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I never really moved towards it. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like it entered my mind, right? It's probably one of those things that, like, at some point I was like, gosh, I'd really like to be a judge. But it's kind of like, remember that there was an episode of Seinfeld when George was unemployed, and he's going over things he might like to do with Jerry. He's like, I like baseball. Maybe I could be an announcer. And Jerry's like, well, yeah, but they usually give those jobs to former ball players, right? So it might be something like that. Like, yeah, sure, I'd love to be a judge, but they usually give those jobs to, attorneys who have practiced for a long time and have quite a bit of knowledge and that kind of thing. But in any event, my first exposure to it would have been, and again, I'm very malleable, I'm finding out, because I have Jerry, I have my mom, and then Steve started pushing me to do all these things. And one of the things he started in the community up in Grand County, one thing he pushed me to do that was beneficial was to be on the performance commission. So in Colorado, judges are up for retention periodically, and there's a commission that writes a report for the public before an election. And so they interview the judge, they send out surveys to people who have appeared in front of the judge, both attorneys and non-attorneys. And each county has one of these commissions, and they're made up of attorneys and non-attorneys. And every 4 years for county court judge, 6 years for district court judge, they interview the judge. And there was a position open. They're volunteer positions, and Steve's like, you gotta get on that. So I was appointed to the performance commission. It would have been 2014. So I was on the performance commission, and there were a couple judges up for retention in the jurisdiction that year. And one of the judges was the county court judge in Grand County at the time. And so I took part in the interview and the discussions, and all that stuff is confidential, so I can't say anything about it. But then we write the commission, the 10 people, I think there's 10 of them, agree on a report to either recommend retention or not. And the voters, right, it's just for voters' purposes. They can, sometimes they, read it, most of the time they don't. Sometimes a judge can get a do not retain recommendation and still be retained, and vice versa. So anyway, that was my first sort of exposure. But that judge, the county court judge in Grand County, wasn't retained that fall. So he was on the ballot and he was not retained. And
he had no opposition.
No, there's no opposition. There's no political parties. It's basically they put your name on the ballot and people say retain or do not retain. That's it. So what happened when he was not retained is that position became open, and Steve and maybe a couple of other people, I don't remember, Steve was like, you have to apply. You need to apply for this position. I'm like,
what are you saying to this?
I'm like, are you kidding? Right? Like, I've been an attorney for like 2 years and there's no way I qualify. And I'm not, I did not think I qualified. So I thought about it. Steve was adamant. And And an interesting thing about Grant County, because, well, in an urban area, like the Front Range, Denver area, to even qualify for a judge, you have to have practiced law for 10 years. In Grant County and some of the other rural jurisdictions, and I imagine this is a historical sort of anomaly, but in Grant County, you don't even need a law degree. I think you need a bachelor's degree, but you do not even need a law degree to be the county judge.
Really?
Yes. And this is probably from a time when they just didn't have a lot of lawyers, or there weren't, they didn't have a lot of access. It's a small county now, but 50 years ago, it was a lot smaller. So yes, you do not even need to have a law degree. Now, there has not been a judge to hold the county court position without a law degree in at least 30 years. And I don't know, probably going back even further. So it's sort of irrelevant, but technically, so anyway, I would not have qualified because I had not practiced law for 10 years in most places, or at least the bigger jurisdictions. But because it was Grant County, didn't matter how long I practiced law. So yeah, I applied, and the process is you do an interview, or they interviewed 8 or 10 people. I don't know how many people. And there's an appointment, or a judicial appointment committee. So of the interviews, they pick 3 people, and those 3 people do an interview with the governor's office. And I got picked. I was one of the 3, obviously, right? And then you go meet with the governor. And I mean, in that interview, the lieutenant governor is just pounding me. He's like, look, you got all these great letters of recommendation here, but he's like, how are you going to do this? You haven't practiced law. I'm like, I got the law degree. I did the best I could to answer his questions, but then he called me. He called me like 2 days later, and he said, you were our unanimous pick. You did a great job, and we think you're going to do a great job as the judge. So, how
surprised were you when you got that call?
I was really excited. I was maybe the most excited I can think of, because I just thought, wow. As much cynicism as I had coming out of law school about everything, not just the legal profession, but life in general, and like here this is huge. I mean, this is an opportunity to do something that I care about, that I believe in, something that I think I can be good at, and something that is going to give me some stability and some security, some financial security that I haven't ever had, right? I mean, I've never been, poor or on the streets, but, a big thing when you graduate is, where are you going to get the money? How are you going to survive? And boy, I mean, I was 30, right? I was 37, and I still hadn't answered that question completely. And this was a chance to say, look, this is a good job, it's good money, and it's something I like, which I just never, for a while there, I thought was not going to happen. So it was I was just excited. I was very excited to get the call. I thought once I was one of the 3, I was like, I know these other 2 folks. They could reasonably pick me. I think a lot of other people were surprised. I got a call from the chief judge pretty quick. I got a call from a lot of the judges, but I got a call from the chief judge in the jurisdiction. And I think, some of them were like, boy, we're going to need to help this guy. We're going to need to give this guy a lot of support, because, it's a hard job. You got to know a lot of stuff, and it's not easy. But it was, that was a great call. That was a great call.
What was the first day on the bench like, and what kind of accommodations did they have to make for you to actually be on the bench, since you're in a wheelchair?
The first case, so the bench was not accessible, right? So
that's what I'm assuming. Yeah.
The courthouse was. The courthouse was accessible. You can get in the door, you get up to the second floor. But as you're pointing out, the bench is raised and there's steps to get up there. So the
For
first
good
case,
reason. You're supposed to be up there as,
right.
as the voice of authority.
Right. So the first case I actually heard, it was a protection. Actually, I don't remember what it was, but it doesn't matter what it was. It was real quick, and it was just the two attorneys, I think. And they put out a little table in the well of the courtroom. So the bench was behind me, and I was there. That's the first one I heard in the courtroom. And then after that, what they did, so the bench is up here. It's a little higher. Just below the bench, but still above the well of the courtroom, is where the clerk sits. And they ramped up to where the clerk sits, and they put a clerk right next to me. So the clerk is right next to me, which actually was very helpful. I told the clerks this. I was like, I wish I had your job for a year before I had this job, because the administrative stuff and what they know and their experience was really invaluable to me. So I did that. And yeah, it was a circus for the first few months, and then
What was the reaction from the people who are who are testifying in the court? Who are there because they've been in trouble?
I remember one guy who was in jail, and it was probably a bond hearing or something, and they brought him over from the jail, and he's got the jumpsuit on, and I think they all knew, right? Everybody knew this guy's new, he's young, he's inexperienced. Let's see if we can take advantage of this guy. And I remember this guy, and I don't remember necessarily what I did in his case or what was said, but I remember as he was leaving, he looked at me and gave me a little smirk, and he said, "You're going to be a good judge." And I don't know why he said that. I don't remember what I did in his case, but it was almost like he threw something out there and I didn't take the bait. But I don't remember exactly, but he said that. But then they did eventually make, not eventually, they had a plan to make the bench accessible. I actually went for 3 weeks to a judge school. I think it was 3 weeks, maybe more. Judge school in Reno, Nevada. Is the National Judicial College, and they have a 3-week program for new judges. And I went there, and during that 3 weeks, they went in and put the ramp in and made the bench accessible.
Did you feel way more confident when you came back from this judge school?
Not way more confident. No. No. It was definitely, there was a learning curve in that first year, 2 was really like drinking from a fire hose. Yeah.
So how long has it been, and how do you feel about your position now?
It's been 7 years. I'm up for retention this year. I do my interview actually with the Performance Commission in a couple of weeks. I feel I do love the position, and I still do, philosophically believe in our justice system. I'm a little more cynical about it now. I think there are things that end up in a criminal justice court that need to be dealt with elsewhere. So that,
am I allowed to ask the follow-up question of what specifically you're talking about here?
Well, yeah. Well, so there's homelessness, right? People who are homeless should not be having criminal charges repeatedly brought against them, and they should not be repeatedly brought in the courtroom. That's a social services issue. That's a social safety net issue. And to treat them in the criminal justice system, mental health is similar, right? It's not a criminal justice issue. It's not a criminal issue at all, or it shouldn't be.
It's a medical more so, yeah.
Yeah, right. So those things are challenging. I think compared to, criminal justice systems around the world, we're still doing a pretty darn good job. So I still do believe in it. And I feel like I'm getting better, but there are certainly certainly some second guessing that still goes on, and certainly many things that I need to get better at. But I feel pretty good about it, and I hope I keep the job for a long time.
You said second guessing. You second guessing yourself. Do other people know that you're second guessing yourself?
I don't know if they do or not. My wife does. I don't know. Some of the other judges that I talk to after I make a decision do. I don't know.
But they're not saying to you, you looked like you were completely in charge and knew what you were talking about. And you're like, oh no, I've been going back and forth on this.
Oh no, people do say that to me, actually. I said, really? Because you seem like you knew what you're doing there. Yeah, I've had people say that for sure. And now, so we just appointed a new, so there are 3 counties in the jurisdiction I'm in, and I am now the senior county court judge. The other 2 county judges, one was appointed 2 years ago, and one was appointed 2 weeks ago. So they're now looking to me for some guidance at times. Right. I know.
This is great. The thing that you couldn't have imagined when you first started, but this is the way things go.
Yeah. Right.
Well, that is awesome. I mean, I hope that you are retained, because it seems like you enjoy it. And I'm sure in knowing you that you're underplaying your ability, and you're a huge asset to the community.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And I hope you're right.
Well, I'm sure I am, and hopefully you come around to recognizing it too. But anyway, Nick, thanks so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Chris. It was fun.
Good. Well, I hope the second one isn't quite as difficult, your second podcast. So
it'll be a philosophy podcast.
Exactly. Well, I didn't ask you too many philosophy questions, so I apologize on that one.
It's all right.
But thanks for joining us, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends, to follow us, to like us. This will be a traditional podcast later on, and you can find it wherever you find podcasts. Please tune in. If you didn't get a chance to hear the whole thing, it will also be on the Facebook page, on the One Revolution Facebook page. It's archived there, so you can go see the whole thing, and you'll see an edited version on the podcast. So please follow us, and please like us, and hopefully you will tune in next week where we have another great discussion. Thanks a ton. See you soon.